How do you feel about the name?
The watch list?
Mm-hmm.
There's probably already a podcast called that.
I'm pretty sure I checked.
Well, if it isn't taken, then sure.
But if it isn't taken, what do you think of the name?
It's okay. It's just a little generic. I feel like it doesn't, like, it, you know, it talks about, like, what's on our watch list next, but it's not, I don't feel like it says anything about us. Like,
well, I feel like its genericness is what's good about it because it's such like an easily searchable thing. Because when I searched it, like nothing came up. So if we have this name, then if somebody searches it, we'll come up immediately.
Yeah.
Because like if somebody searches the watch list, like that's something that somebody could search, but no one's going to search like, you know, Andrew and Hannah's dinner movie night madness.
Maybe
alternate title.
Maybe it's called The Watch List, and then on the poster has like some kind of like descriptor heading.
Well, I figured it would just be The Watch List with Andrew and Hannah.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
But like if you search it, it's just The Watch List.
Husband and wife duo extraordinaire.
Sure.
Will that fit on the thumbnail?
Maybe.
The Watch List with Andrew and Hannah, husband and wife duo extraordinaire, 2022 edition.
Oh boy.
This is a podcast that's just going to be about the movies that we watch because we met in what some could call film school, technically.
We majored in film.
They didn't call it film school, but we call it film school because it was a school where we learned about film.
Yeah.
So film has been kind of at the core of our relationship from the beginning. And we watch a lot of movies and talk about them over dinner. So we feel like just replace the dinner with a microphone and bam, boom.
Yeah, it's like you're sitting at our dinner table with us.
Except you don't hear our food sounds.
Yeah.
Slurping spaghetti and whatever.
Just spaghetti.
Yeah. Well, what other foods do you need? You know, didn't Grimes eat spaghetti for like 3 years?
Yeah, and then her hair started to fall out.
Well, worth it.
Yeah, maybe.
I think. We're just going to do a little mini episode just to start things off. The format of this podcast, the way I envision it, is, and I'll work backwards on this. At the end of the episode, we're going to talk about what movie we plan to watch next and our predictions on it, what we're expecting, what we hope for. Maybe if one of us has seen it, you know, we'll ask the other their expectations knowing what's to come. And then sort of the main section of the podcast will be the movies that we've watched since our last recording. And then the podcast will start talking about the movie that we said we were going to watch at the end of the previous episode. You can see why I worked backwards in this explanation.
Yeah. I feel like we're not always going to stick to what we're going to watch next.
Well, that's half the fun.
I feel like we're like, maybe we should watch this. And then we're like, no, let's throw on this movie real quick.
Well, that's the spontaneity of our relationship, you know? You're not going to get this from other podcasts who are so rigid about their schedule, maybe, probably.
Well, if it starts to feel like a chore, it's not going to be as fun. Like, the whole point of watching films is to be inspired, to be, like, enjoying things creatively.
I think what Hannah's trying to say is that we're going to end up with multiple episodes in a row of us discussing Spider-Man 3, which is probably the movie that I'm going to be throwing on the most often.
No, maybe not Spider-Man 3.
But, well, if you're going to watch any Spider-Man movie, why not the best one?
I think almost everyone would disagree with you on that.
Well, that's why I need to voice my opinion. I have a unique opinion, I guess, because everybody else seems to hate Spider-Man 3, and it's my favorite Tobey Maguire movie. And Tobey Maguire's probably my favorite Spider-Man.
See, I don't know. I find him charming, but just he is such a goof. Like the whole Bully Maguire thing. It's played such for laughs about how he's like a big dork, and it's less about him being like a cool superhero.
That's entertainment,
I guess.
So bridging off of that, in this mini episode, we're just going to give a little bit of context on the kinds of movies that we tend to like, that we tend to go for. So you kind of know what you're in store for coming up with the movies that we're going to watch. Of course, at the end of every episode, we'll give a little plug to our letterbox where you can see the wider breadth of our movie ratings and reviews and what's at the top of our lists and what's at the bottom. But just to start, we'll give a little bit of an explanation of what we tend to like, and we'll break down 3 movies that we feel like describe our taste in movies, portray our taste in movies the best. Not necessarily our 3 favorite movies, but 3 choice films that we think, tell our
film story, film watching.
Just the things that we tend to like. Yeah.
Just to paint a picture.
So the kind of movies that I like, I've been using this quote, I guess you would call it, quite a bit lately when describing my taste in movies. And it's something that my brother once said, because we used to watch a lot of movies together, which is he likes movies with his head. I like movies with my heart. So he goes more for movies that have a lot to think about, a lot to chew on, maybe don't give definitive answers at the end, but they have the audience come to their own conclusion, just a lot to think about. Not so much for me. I tend to like movies that make me feel emotional, make me feel emotionally invested in the characters, make me happy, sad, laugh, cry, scared. If I come away from a movie feeling like I went on an emotional roller coaster or like that I was really invested, then I tend to like movies. So I don't like as many movies where I don't feel like there's a character to root for or a character to identify with. But I like movies with a lot of heart. Movies that make me have a good, healthy cry.
Mm-hmm.
And,
they just make you feel things.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because, I think of movies as escapism, and just, I don't want to say that I like movies where I just check my brain at the door or turn my brain off. I do like to think about what I'm watching, which is, of course, why we have discussions about movies and why I want to do a podcast about it. But overall, I just like to feel kind of swept up in the moment and the enjoyment of it, and just, identify with characters and like I said, movies that just have a lot of heart.
So the way you're saying that you like movies with your heart, I feel like I maybe am geared towards movies with my eyes. I feel like for me, what I find really compelling in most of my favorite films is how stylized it is, great cinematography, lighting, color palette, costumes. Whenever we're watching something, I feel like I'm always commenting like, oh, that's a great outfit. Oh, I love their shoes. Like, that's a big component for me, is really great costume design. And just like all those elements, some of my favorite movies are just like super colorful and bright and just like amazing to look at. And that, there's definitely exceptions to the rules. Some of my favorite movies are more substance over style, but that kind of gives it its own style. Like the lack of typical cinema flair is what makes it interesting. How like bare bones it is. That's usually what I go for. And if we're going for like another body part, like the only thing I can think of is with the funny bone. I don't know. It sounds silly, but I obviously like a lot of my favorite films in the list have some kind of humor element to it. A lot of them skew towards more like a darker humor, black humor, or it's a drama that maybe has like some laughs, like The Big Short, where it's like, it's a drama, but they're kind of being cheeky about it, that kind of thing. That's usually the type of films that I go for.
I think the funny bone aspect is where we probably have the most crossover with just like quirky movies that are funny, not necessarily for having a lot of jokes, but just for characters who are written to be funny being put in funny situations where they act funny. You know what I mean?
Like, Shoot, it's
I think the movie that you're thinking of may be one of the movies that I'm going to say in my 3 movies. So if it is, I kind of want to save it. But
okay, then I will, because I'm having trouble remembering the title exactly right now. Anyway.
Okay, well, maybe it's not then, because this is a pretty memorable movie for you. I really don't think you would forget the title.
Lars and the Real Girl.
No, but that's a great movie.
Because I was thinking, Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl. I'm like, that's not the movie I'm thinking of. No, Lars and the Real Girl, where it's like, it's kind of a serious movie, but it just can't be taken seriously, and it's just really sweet and charming.
Yeah.
And has a lot of laughable moments.
But there's no jokes.
You're not really laughing at the character, you're more like laughing at the situation that everyone's going along with, but you're kind of happy that they are, because it would be awkward if they didn't.
Yeah. And, just the weirdness of the whole scenario.
Yeah. That's what makes that movie so great, is just the complex layers of it all.
Yeah. And going back to what you were saying earlier about liking movies with your eyes, I mean, there's definitely crossover for me there as well. I love visually stunning movies, but the heart takes precedent. Because we just watched a couple weeks ago Everything Everywhere All at Once, and it was visually one of the most stunning movies I'd ever seen. You know, both from like a cinematography and production design standpoint, but also from editing. You know, some of those insanely quick cut sequences were fantastic, and visually it was just amazing. Mm-hmm. But the heart didn't really get me. I felt like there were moments where they were trying to be emotional with the connection of the husband and wife and the mother and daughter, but they didn't really stick the landing. And so I came away from that movie feeling like with one more script rewrite, I would have loved it. But as it stood, I was like, yeah, it was good. Not quite as good as I thought it was going to be. It was really built up to me. Some of my coworkers were like, you have to see this movie. And I was like, okay. And then I did. And it was good.
I mean, I thought it was the best movie I've seen this year. I mean, we haven't seen that many new movies this year. I think we've maybe seen Sonic 2.
Great movie. If you're a Sonic fan. If you're not a Sonic fan, fine. Not so much.
It was all right. There was some weird jokes in that, Limp Bizkit, and just, I don't know.
Well, the whole dance sequence was one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life. But yeah, other than that, you know, as a Sonic fan, I had a great time.
The Everything Everywhere All at Once film, I felt like there was enough. Like, it was stylish. There was some funny elements to it. There was some heart. I felt like I could relate to the mother character on some level, feeling like there's a lot of things that I want to do, but I haven't, like, maybe done as much as I want to do yet. Stuff like that. To me, it was maybe more engaging to me because I could maybe relate to the character a bit, but I guess not really the same for you.
I just felt like it was close. Like, I felt like they almost stuck the landing on some of those themes, but something kind of got lost. And I was like, wait, we're kind of moving on from this really fast. I don't feel like we got the closure that I was looking for here.
Yeah, they could have maybe cut down on the hot dog fingers a little bit, and then maybe done a little bit more with the husband and wife character about the divorce and everything. And yeah, I think that would have been better. It wasn't my favorite script, but it was a really interesting movie to watch.
I mean, I enjoyed it for sure. You know, I gave it like a pretty good rating. All I'm trying to say is that with one more script rewrite, just to tweak a couple of things, I think it could have been like in my top 30 favorite films.
Yeah.
Which is a list that we both have. We've been keeping for a couple of years. I don't know why 30. I think my friend from like grade school had a top 30 list, and so I just copied him, who I'm still friends with, by the way. But
well, 50 almost seems like too much.
50 is too many.
Yeah. So
10 is too few.
30 is like kind of a good rounded out number. Like, here's my best of the best, and then here's some like really good films.
Yeah.
Because you start at maybe like 5 out of 5 stars, and then towards the end of the list, it's like 4 out of 4 stars. Any further down, it's just going to be like, that movie was okay, and I don't know.
Well, speaking of which, so again, like I said, we're not gonna talk about our top 3 favorite films necessarily, but just 3 films that we feel nicely describe our taste in movies, which is gonna tie into a lot of what we already said. So my first one, I'll just come right out and say it: Toy Story.
Mm-hmm.
Of course,
that tracks. Yeah.
Toy Story, for me, the reason why I'm putting it in these 3 is because mostly the nostalgia. I like to say it's the first movie I ever loved. I don't know if that's true, but it's definitely the longest lasting movie that I liked from a really young age and still love to this day. I still get emotional when I watch it. I saw it in theaters when it was re-released in 3D before Toy Story 3 and loved it. It's just, it's a movie that means so much to me, and it doesn't have like a ton of emotional aspects to it other than sort of the jealousy of Woody and then sort of the catharsis of making friends with Buzz, making amends, and becoming like both Andy's favorite toys. But the emotional aspect mainly comes from the nostalgia, and a lot of my favorite movies in my top 30 have a nostalgic tinge to them. Mm-hmm. Either I saw them at a young age or as a teen when I felt like my horizons of movie watching were really like growing and exploding, and I was exploring a lot more types of movies that didn't come out during my lifetime and came out 20, 30 years, 60 years earlier. But it mainly makes the list because it means so much to me. It's a movie that I've loved for the longest time. It has one of my favorite actors in it, Tom Hanks. I love Tom Hanks movies. Mm-hmm. And I love animated movies as well. And, this podcast is mainly going to be about movies. It's not really going to be about TV shows, but animated media really speaks to me. And I've noticed that especially within the past year or two, that my favorite TV shows of all time tend to be animated. And
why do you think that you're drawn towards animated films and television shows?
I don't think it's a coincidence, because like when I say my favorite TV shows of all time, I'm talking like there's a lot of anime, of course, but there's also like Steven Universe is one of my all-time favorite shows, and I only watched that within the past couple of years. Not Steven Universe Future, that one sucks, but I only watched it within the last couple of years. Avatar: The Last Airbender I also love, and these shows tend to get me a lot more emotional, more than live action shows do. And I think if I had to guess, I would say animated shows maybe invest in their characters a little bit more and character development a little bit more. Like Steven Universe has some of the most character development I've ever seen in a TV show. You look at the characters in episode 1 versus the characters, towards the end of the show, and they've made big changes. The same with Avatar: The Last Airbender. And so that speaks to my love of feeling emotional during movies, is that I really identify with these characters' journeys. And so Toy Story made the list. Close second in the animated category would have been either Spirited Away or Kiki's Delivery Service. But I just felt like an animated movie had to make the list just because animated movies really just speak to me.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that you say that you feel like animated shows are more invested in character development. I'm sure that's true with like your favorite shows, but I feel like a lot of animated shows are a lot more serialized. Mm-hmm. And I feel like when it comes to television shows, I'm really drawn to good established character related stuff as well, and like well written plots and arcs and stuff. So I think that's interesting that you say you're drawn to animation that way, because I feel like I'm drawn to live action for those reasons.
Just some of the live action TV shows that I've watched haven't had as much of a focus on character development. Main one being Breaking Bad, I guess, has a lot of character development. But, I mean, we just finished watching Mad Men, and that show had very little character development. But by the time we reached the end of that show, it seemed purposeful that there was no character development. So I was okay with it, but that TV show didn't exactly join the ranks of my favorites. But anyway, back to the topic of movies. Do you want to share your first of your 3?
Yeah, so the first is Amelie. which I feel like
Didn't expect that.
I went on Letterboxd and I looked at movies that I rated 5 out of 5 stars. And I saw Amelie and I'm like, ooh, I think that is a really good descriptor of the kind of films that I like.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm ripe for a rewatch on it because it's been a couple of
too.
years since I've seen it.
I don't think we didn't watch it together, did we?
No, I watched it alone in my room while eating pierogies. Great experience.
You have such a sense memory for like specific foods that you eat while watching movies and TV shows.
Well, if it was memorable, like I ate a whole potato flatbread pizza while watching the beginning of Seven. Where they find like the glutton. I was like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be eating like a whole pizza right now.
But you kept eating it, right?
Of course. Yeah, so Amelie, it's bright, it's colorful, it's also sort of dark. The beginning, I can't remember. I think it's her mother. Her mother like jumps off of like the apartment building or whatever. So it has sort of like a darkish element to it. But like Amelie is like weirdly optimistic. Mm-hmm. Like her life isn't like that great. Like if you lay it out, it's like, oh, she lives in Paris in like a small apartment and she works like kind of like a minimum wage job, but like she seems so content.
She makes creme brulee.
Yeah, she makes creme brulee and she cracks it with a spoon. So like it has like the epicure, the love of life, like enjoying food and that kind of thing. I love like Paris and French films, and I love how optimistic she is about like finding love, even though she's like kind of weird, but she like finds the someone that suits her. So it's quirky, it's colorful, it's stylish. It has sort of a dark element to it. Yeah. It has like all the components of what I'm looking for in a film. And before I saw this film, I was like, oh, I think I'm really going to like Amelie. Sometimes when I psych myself up and say that I'm going to like a movie, I end up being like disappointed because it doesn't end up as good as I want it to be. But Amelie is definitely one that was as good as I wanted it to be.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. I didn't expect you to say Amelie because I feel like you never talk about that movie. But thinking about it now, I'm like, yeah, that really does seem like your kind of movie. Yeah. As opposed to Toy Story, where I feel like I never shut up about Toy Story. I mean, I have like a collection of the toys for Pete's sake.
Yeah. I mean, it's a movie that I haven't seen in a while, so I can't speak on it as much, but it just has everything that I love about a movie. When I'm seeking out a movie, I'm usually like, ooh, is it like bright and colorful? Like, does it have a cool cinematographer? Is it by an interesting auteur director? Is it, a dark comedy? Does it have good writing? Like, that's the kind of things that I'm usually searching for.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So my second movie, I'm not going to say number 2 movie because these are in no particular order, but my second movie is going to be Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Mm-hmm. So this is a movie, I put this in my 3 because it has a connection to video games, which is a big thing for me. I've always loved retro gaming and that kind of stuff. It has that Canadian connection. It was directed by Edgar Wright, who I feel like is a very important director in our relationship. Mm-hmm. And that's a director who, I did a video director study on in high school that I think I still have and may see the light of day someday, but I really respect his style. If I had a favorite director, it might be Edgar Wright. I don't really tend to consider myself someone who has a favorite director because I just like a wide variety of movies. But Edgar Wright's style is definitely up there and I really appreciate and respect it. And Scott Pilgrim is a movie that, it's like you with Amelie, like you thought you were going to love it and then you did. Right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Scott Pilgrim, all I did was I saw the poster for it and I read the log line. And the poster is, the red poster with him playing bass with his head down and the logo is up there. Yeah. Scott Pilgrim versus the World, like really, really cool, detailed artwork for the title. And then the log line, you know, a guy has to defeat a woman's 7 evil exes in order to be with her. And it's like in the style of a video game. And I was like, holy crap. I have to see this movie.
Yeah.
And I just like immediately got so psyched. And I went to see it with, I think I was with my mom and my friend. And, you know, the opening scene started and they start the first song. And then again, the animated title comes up and that opening number starts. And I was just like, I was exactly like Knives Chow at the end of that scene where like my eyes were wide open and my mind was blown. And I just like loved the whole experience. And the day that I saw it, I went out and I bought the soundtrack on CD and just like listened to it and listened to it and listened to it, which brings me to my next reason for picking it is because it's a big music movie. And
they're in a band.
Music is a big thing in my life. You know, like I feel like if I'm in a portion of my life where I'm not listening to a ton of music, that's a sad time for me. You know, I feel like I gotta have some kind of soundtrack going or something because you know it brings up my mood. You know, like singing on the car ride home or on the bike ride home really like gets those endorphins going. So music is a big thing for me, and this is just a movie that I loved since day one. It's maybe the movie that I've seen the most times. Like at least 15 times I've seen it because I've seen it like multiple times on its own. My DVD copy I wore out. It got too scratched to play anymore, and I had to buy a Blu-ray copy. That DVD copy had more than one commentary track with the actors and the crew.
I didn't know that.
Both of which I listened to multiple times.
Of course.
So, at the very least, it's the movie that I've seen the most times within, you know, whatever, like a 5-year period or whatever. Maybe not since birth, but but I watched the absolute heck out of that movie, and of course, I later read the graphic novels. You actually bought me the graphic novels for Christmas. I think
right.
I think I had the second and the third one, and you bought me the rest for Christmas.
Yeah.
1 year.
And one of them was actually signed in the front, and I didn't notice until I gave it to you.
Yeah, because you bought them used from Barnes and Noble, and you gave them to me, and I opened to the first page of the first volume, and I was like, did you look at these before wrapping them? And you were like, what? Is something wrong? And I was like, no, it's signed by Brian Lee O'Malley.
That was like an extra cool gift ad.
Yeah, and he drew a little picture of Kim, who's a character that I love. The only thing is he addressed it to like Sean or something. Like it's like Brian Lee O'Malley to Sean.
Just cross it out and write in.
Well, I mean, who is Sean to give away signed copies or like sell or whatever, donate? Like,
yeah, that seems weird.
Why get your copy of your book signed and then not want it anymore?
Just stop being a fan or something.
So, lots of reasons to love that movie. Of course, Michael Cera, national treasure.
He's
of
great.
Canada.
He is. I think he's really underrated as a director.
I'd watch whatever he directs.
I feel like he probably has, but he's very underrated as an actor. A lot of people think he's like really stilted and weird, but you know, that's the type of roles that he's playing.
That's what got him famous.
That's what makes him funny, is seeing him play like those awkward, weird characters. That's fine.
Yeah. Anyway, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, my number 2 pick. Video games, music, Canada, Edgar Wright. A lot of reasons to love it.
Of course. I think that really checks all your boxes.
Mm-hmm.
Usually we've watched a lot of music documentaries and a lot of movies with like great soundtracks and stuff, I would say. So
there's a car alarm going off in our parking lot. Hold for sound, please. And we're good.
Okay, so I said Amelie.
Mm-hmm.
So the next one is Trainspotting.
Oh, of course.
So this is one of my favorite films of all time.
I feel like this is a film that when people find out that it's one of your favorite films, they raise a bit of an eyebrow.
I think I give off the appearance that I'm really wholesome, but there's a darkness.
Don't I know it?
I'm sort of like a bit of a closet emo, closet goth.
Mm-hmm.
I love, like I mentioned with Amelie, like I love sort of something that has like a dark slant to it. Like I don't really love watching like straight dramas all the time because I can find those really depressing. But I love sort of the catharsis of seeing a sad moment, but it being okay because it's being played light. I think maybe that helps me navigate through the world is if bad things are happening to me, it's better to like laugh it off or, you know, just like let it go into the wind kind of thing. Yeah. So that's maybe why I'm drawn to movies like that. So Trainspotting, it's kind of a darker subject, but the way it is played off is more cheeky. And it's very stylish. You know, he's going through a lot. Ewan McGregor's character, he's doing like a detox, and then you'll see like a stylized shot of him like swimming inside of a toilet and stuff like that. Or
I got you a print recently of like a movie poster of Trainspotting, and it's the still of him coming out of the toilet. And I was like, hey, I got you a Trainspotting print. And you were like, oh, thanks.
Well, when you think of Trainspotting, you kind of think of the classic poster with like all their heads like dipping out and into the frame and everything, and just Ewan McGregor coming up from the toilet. Not to be expected.
Ewan McGregor coming out of the toilet is the scene that I think of when I think of Trainspotting.
I mean, I agree. And when I first saw that scene, I was like blown away. I was like, what the heck? I've never seen a film quite like this. He's swimming inside of a toilet and it's like this dream sequence that's like amazing. Just how off the wall it is. Like no one's ever done this before kind of thing. Another good example of sort of the juxtaposition between like darker content and playing it more for laughs is when I think he goes through like a heroin drug overdose, and I think the song talks about it being like the perfect day or like a happy day kind of thing.
Like This Perfect Day from Legally Blonde?
Not quite, but something.
Maybe they should have used that song.
Yeah, they probably should have. Something in a similar vein where he's like, he falls on the floor and then he's like falling through the floor and then it kind of like fades into him being on like a gurney. Just the whole stylisticness of how they decided to shoot that. You know, you've seen overdoses and stuff in other films, but just the way they decide to tackle showing off different scenes like that, I think that's way more important than the heist elements of the movie. Some of that's a little lost on me. I'm like, I don't even really need the heist elements. What I'm really loving is the coming of age tale of like these young guys, except for, what is it? Bagby? No.
Guy with the mustache?
Yeah. Is that Bagby?
I don't know.
It's been a couple years since I've seen it.
It's your favorite movie.
I know.
I've only seen it once. And when I saw
Trainspotting too, though.
Yeah. Also once.
So we got Sick Boy.
When I first watched it, I watched it before we were dating because you said it was your favorite movie. And I was like, let me see what this is all about. And I think I want to rewatch it now that I have the perspective that you've shared, because I was definitely looking at it from the heist elements. And I was like, you know, it's kind of a poor man's Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, which is also a movie that we've watched together under interesting circumstances.
I had trouble following that film just because their Cockney accents were so thick. I had so much trouble figuring out what was going on. And then I was also distracted because I was sitting next to you.
Right. And we hadn't shared our feelings about each other yet.
Yeah, of course.
But Trainspotting, we watched Trainspotting 2 together, and I actually like Trainspotting 2 more than Trainspotting 1.
Well, what I was saying before is, to me, like, I don't even need the heist elements. What I love about the film is a group of Scottish friends that are young, sort of a coming-of-age tale of, like, Arrested Development, where they're kind of stuck in life and they're using heroin as sort of a crutch to find happiness kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's what I love about it, them going to the pub, them playing soccer, and just, like, trying to quit heroin, well, Ewan McGregor's character especially, trying to quit heroin and then kind of going back to it and just like not knowing what to do with life. And that way I think it's more similar to something like Frances Ha, just like sort of a time in your life where you're like, I'm not sure. Like that's where the title Trainspotting comes from, is like standing and watching trains go by, just kind of like the monotony of life. So to that degree, I think it's more important, those elements, than the heist.
Yeah. Well, I'm interested to rewatch it now with that perspective, because I haven't seen it in, like 6 years.
Well, we got the Blu-ray.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So I think that's a really good... It checks all my boxes. You got the dark comedy. You got coming of age, which I don't know if I mentioned at this point. Amelie is basically a coming of age film as well. Mm-hmm. And then you got the stylistic element of like interesting shots, bright colors, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. So my third pick is, I think, the point where our two tastes in movies cross over the most. You know, it's the exact center of that Venn diagram of movies that you love and movies that I love. And that's Napoleon Dynamite.
I almost picked that as my third, but I went with something different.
Yeah. So we went through and revised our top 30 recently, and I think Napoleon Dynamite was the film that was highest on both of our lists. That were on both lists. You know,
yeah.
Like I don't think we shared too many films that were on both lists. Maybe like one or two, but of those, Napoleon Dynamite was the highest. And I know it for a fact it's a movie that means a lot to the both of us, because we've seen it so many times, both, you know, many times before we even met each other, and then a couple of times since we got together. We have a very specific memory of packing, moving out of our last place the night before, finishing up the last couple of boxes that needed packing, and just letting Napoleon Dynamite play in the background the whole time. Mm-hmm. That's a really special memory.
Of course.
And I think it's like the most quotable movie ever made.
Probably. Like, I was going to say, it was the perfect movie to throw on the background because we've seen it so many times and we know all the words. So it's easy for us to throw it on the background and not look. And it's like, oh, it's the scene where he's at the chicken farm now or whatever. Like, you don't need to really follow it.
Can't find my checkbook. Hope you don't mind the paying change.
It's such a unique script. Like, because it was written by people kind of coming from that background and everything. And it's coming of age. It's just a really interesting screenplay, really funny, but sort of a bit of a slice of life. Like, you're just kind of dipping into Napoleon's world for a couple weeks. Mm-hmm. I just love everything about it. I could literally throw it on every day and it would just be enjoyable. Yeah.
Like, there was a night when we were trying to fall asleep and we couldn't get to sleep because one of us just like quoted one line from Napoleon Dynamite, and then we just kept going back and forth quoting like every single line that came to our minds. Like, you know, your mom goes to college. Do the chickens have large talons? Borrow some from the school nurse. I know she has like 5, 6 in her drawer.
I'm not gonna do that, you sicko.
Yeah. And there was also a really special moment in this, again, was before we were dating. This was in film school, where we had just finished talking about Napoleon Dynamite in a specific scene with our friend Gabe, who also has a podcast that we've been on. We were both on recently. Yeah. Carl and Gabe Go to the Movies. Shout out to them. Mm-hmm. We had just finished talking about that scene and how funny it was. And then, like, completely out of nowhere, our film professor was like, all right, yeah, welcome to class today. I'm just going to throw on this scene real quick. And it was the same scene that we had just talked about. And we were just like laughing in the back of the classroom like idiots because we couldn't believe what had just happened.
Well, part of the reason why it was such a weird coincidence is it's the after credits scene.
Yeah, it's not even like one of the more famous scenes, like right in the middle of the movie.
Yeah, it's like Kip singing Always and Forever. And so it was random that we were even talking about it in the first place. And it was even more random that the teacher's like, all right, I'm going to choose today to show this after credit scene. And it relates to how music can be used in movies. Or
is that what it was?
Something like super loose, just giving any reason to show it. And we were just dying laughing because, like, why? Out of everything you could have shown in film class and that. And it was just so funny.
And I wonder, is it possible that he heard us talking about it and then decided to show it? But like, why? that would seem so weird to make that choice.
I don't know.
Anyway.
Maybe it is. Maybe he heard us. I don't know.
So the reason why it makes my list is because it's just a movie that I get endless enjoyment out of. And it's a perfect example of what I was saying earlier, is a movie that doesn't necessarily have jokes, but it's about characters who are written funny being put in funny situations and reacting to things in a funny way.
That's almost what makes it better, because I feel like most comedy writing and films can come off as hacky. I think it's way better when something is just played for laughs.
Yeah.
Where a situation is funny, where it's like, oh, this weird kid is angsty and lying about going to Alaska and shooting wolves. Wolverines, yeah. And it's like, that's funny because everyone kind of knows, like, this weird kid that just, like, makes up these bizarre lies. It's kind of dorky.
Or that weird kid at some point.
Kid for, I mean, probably me at some elements, and I'm sure you.
Oh, I definitely told tall tales, for sure.
Oh, yeah. I told my friends in elementary school that I had a ghost.
I told my friend in elementary school that I was from the future, and I came back, knocked my past self out, and hid him in the basement, and then masqueraded as my past self. And in the future, me and him lived next door to each other and designed Lego and played Star Wars video games.
The real question is, why, if you're living such a great life in the future, would you choose to come back and be like an adolescent and have to go through that trauma again?
Because youth is fleeting.
I don't know. I could take it or leave.
Do I need a reason? I was probably like 8.
Yeah. In your mind, you're like, oh yeah, we're going to be designing Lego. And you're like, oh, nothing better than designing Lego other than reliving grade 3.
I was just trying to be cool, okay? Anyway, Napoleon Dynamite. Great movie, endlessly rewatchable, endlessly quotable. Just great performances overall. A great example of funny character in a funny situation saying funny things that aren't jokes is, Kip sitting at the side of the road, putting on his rollerblades, going, "It'd be nice if you could pull me into town." And like, that's not necessarily that's not a joke, but just the whole situation and the way he says it is funny. The way he looks with his sleeveless blue shirt and sweatpants. I just really get a kick out of it.
I mean, I agree. Just a lot of different elements like that. And I really love, in that scene, they just cut to them, like, going off on their journey. It's like, that's all that needs to be said. Like, Napoleon doesn't really need to respond to that or whatever. Like, we get the idea, just cutting ahead.
And then tying it back into the emotional aspect really quick. By the end of the movie, you're rooting for these weird kids because you spent the movie with them. And then to see the achievement of, like, Napoleon doing a weird dance that you think would alienate him even more from the student body, but it causes everybody to just cheer and, rejuvenate his friendship with Deb and presumably win the class presidency or whatnot for Pedro. It just really is empowering. It's the second best underdog story next to Rocky. Another one of my favorite movies.
Both equally similar.
Yeah.
Rocky didn't win the fight, but it was a moral victory. And same with Napoleon. He didn't win class presidency, but he had the moral victory of helping his friend out in a time of crisis.
Yeah. Stuff that you can really feel for and identify with and, feel like the gif of the black woman crying.
Yeah. Yeah,
fist
exactly.
pumping.
Well, that's Deb in the audience where she's just like smiling and clapping. Yeah. It's so great. It's quirky. It's a little depressing almost because he's kind of a nerd. He doesn't have a lot of friends, but then he finds like these great friends in Pedro and Deb.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the underdog story, and it has a happy ending.
Yeah.
It's sweet.
Makes you feel, and then they play tetherball. It makes you feel good.
And I would argue that movie is super stylish because of how not stylish it is. It's so distinctive looking, where it's like the middle of America dorky outfits where he's wearing like sweatpants and just like weird
moon shoes.
Yeah, he'll be wearing like a horse sweater or something. Just, really crazy outfits. He's like, oh, the awesome suit I got. And it's just like a brown suit on like a female mannequin and stuff.
It's a nice suit.
That's what makes it so special, is because there's no other film that aesthetically looks exactly like Napoleon Dynamite. You throw on a scene, you're like, oh, that's Napoleon Dynamite kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, you recognize those Stars and Stripes sweatpants that Rex Kwon Do is wearing.
Of course.
Where else are you going to see that?
Get a roundhouse kicked
to the face
with these bad boys.
Bow to your sensei. Bow to your sensei.
Well, we could spend the rest of the night just quoting this movie.
Sure.
We should probably move on.
Let me pull up the quote list. Hang on. Let me grab the Blu-ray. I have it right here.
No.
Napoleon Dynamite. Freaking Sweet Edition. 10 sweet years.
That's right.
Anyway. Is Napoleon Dynamite your third pick too?
As I mentioned before, I was really considering making it my third choice because it has a lot of elements that I really like in it. Sort of quirky movie, coming of age movie with a great script. But what I ended up choosing was something a bit different. I picked Dazed and Confused.
Okay.
So it has those sort of similar elements. It's coming of age. It's a slice of life. It takes course over like the last day of high school. It's a period piece, which I love.
Mm-hmm.
The 70s, great soundtrack. It's stylish, but it's also sort of in a pared down way of being the 70s time period and really trying to like immerse yourself as the viewer into that time period. But the dialogue is more, I don't know if it's genuine, but it's not as specific as other movies where they're trying to play it off as really seriously. It's more like naturalistic dialogue, which I really like about that kind of thing. And in sort of a similar way to Napoleon Dynamite, where it feels more like real teenagers interacting with each other in that same way.
Yeah. I feel like I have less to comment on this movie because I've only seen it once and it was a while ago. It was with you, but I was obviously distracted by your beauty at the time.
Well, maybe we'll have to rewatch that too.
Yeah.
Well, again, one big thing for me is I love summer movies. I love movies where it's like a bunch of kids and they're like, oh, we're going to go off and we're going to have like summer break and we're going to hang out and have fun. So it has a lot of those elements in that too. Like Stand By Me, where it's just like a bunch of kids like playing around the Sandlot, that kind of thing, where it's just we're having fun and it's summer and it's just like sort of a freedom that you don't see in movies that maybe take place during the school year.
Right. Well, I feel like a similar movie that maybe I liked more than Dazed and Confused, but you didn't like quite as much was American Graffiti.
I mean, maybe I was amazed by your beauty.
We did watch it together.
It is quite a similar movie, but I think it takes place during different eras.
Yeah, well, Dazed and Confused is 70s. American Graffiti is 60s, because I think the tagline is like, "Where were you in '62?" Early 60s.
Right. Well, one of the characters goes to Vietnam. Right. So, yeah. So it sort of has the post-50s nostalgia element.
It's like different interpretations of the same idea because, like, Dazed and Confused, I think, is the first day of summer and American Graffiti is the last day of summer.
Yeah, before they go off and have different lives.
Yeah, but they both follow, like, multiple different characters throughout one night. If I'm not mistaken.
It is a very similar construct.
Yeah.
I think maybe I just couldn't jive with the characters as much.
You don't like Ron Howard?
Well, of course I like
Richard Dreyfuss. Come on. What about Bob? Classic.
Who is Richard Dreyfuss in this?
He was the guy who walks the lonely road. The only one that he had ever known. No, like, wait. So no, he's like chasing after the woman who has like that car. I don't know much about cars. I don't remember what kind of car it was. But
Did they like kiss while the Wolfman played or something?
Wolfman Jack did. Yeah, he had to do with his story because I think they were listening to Wolfman Jack the whole time, like the majority of the movie. But he finds himself wandering into Wolfman Jack's studio towards the end, and then I think he makes the decision not to meet up with the woman and instead like move on with his life and get out of town, get out of Dodge.
I think maybe the Wolfman theme was to bridge sort of the stories together. Like they're all here in this one moment, this one day kind of thing.
So what you're saying is we should have a back-to-back double feature of American Graffiti and Dazed and Confused.
I think so. Obviously American Graffiti first because it takes place first. I think what I like about Dazed and Confused is maybe there's like youthful optimism and it's like, ooh, we're like kicking it off our summer and it's gonna be like best summer ever and like that kind of thing, whereas American Graffiti speaks to like a time of your life being over.
Yeah, they're more bummed out in American Graffiti.
Yeah, and it's more like they're driving around but they're kind of like meh.
Lost.
Well, they're driving around for fun. Like, that's something they did back then.
No, I mean, like, mentally lost.
Mentally
like,
lost,
what are we going to do, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
We gotta try and find the fun in this last day of summer, but it's all going to be over soon anyway.
Yeah, and I think that's, I don't know, maybe that's more sad to me, and I can't relate to that as much.
That's fair.
Because to me, you know, my time of high school being over, it was less bittersweet and more like, oh, okay.
Good that that's over and done with.
Yeah, I'm more excited to go to college and study something that I love doing than like studying math or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. But so Dazed and Confused is a lot more of that optimism where we're seeing kids of different ages. We're seeing like the incoming freshmen. We're seeing like seniors graduating. We're seeing, you know, people going to parties and, you know, they're driving around, but it's, you know, it's to hit someone with a baseball bat or whatever, or like hazing, or it's to go to a party, or, you know, it's just a little more lighthearted. Perhaps that's what I enjoy about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's fair. If you want more insight into, like I said before, just the wider breadth of movies that we like or dislike, you can check out our Letterboxd accounts. I, on Letterboxd, am a username that I do not remember.
Isn't it Winesty?
I don't know.
Well, Andrew Brannon is your name on it, I believe.
Probably Andrew G. Brannon or Andrew Brannon. Instagram, I'm Andrew Brannon. Something along those lines.
You'll find it. And I'm Hannah Brannon.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Not Bacon?
Nope.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. The one and only spot on the internet where you chose to take my name.
No, on my Instagram, I'm like Bacon Brannon, and my email, I'm Bacon Brannon.
I don't believe you. So, finally, to end off the podcast, this is pretty much how we're going to end every episode. We're going to talk about the movie that we plan to watch next. But right now, we don't have a plan.
That's kind of fun, though. I kind of wanted to watch... It's a documentary about, what is that title? Where it's about, like, the daughter pretending to kill her dad in funny ways to cope with his death kind of thing.
Civil War Ken Burns.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
the one you're thinking of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I maybe had that in mind, or maybe, like, The Last Picture Show with Jeff Bridges.
I am interested in that one where she's trying to kill her dad. I mean... Not trying to kill, but you wait. No, explain it again.
Okay, so the premise of the film is, I mean, I haven't seen it yet.
We watched the trailer. The trailer looked really interesting.
He's dying of cancer or something like that, and he knows he doesn't have much longer to live. So they thought it would be interesting to film him pretending to die in funny and cinematic ways as a way of coping with his end coming.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that perfectly plays into the kinds of things that you talked about liking in movies, like Trainspotting, is like sad things that have like a lighthearted twist to them.
Yeah.
To help cope with that idea.
Exactly. I saw the trailer and I'm like, ooh, that is up my alley. Same with films like Shirkers that I saw a trailer for on Netflix, where it's a quirky documentary, but it's kind of dark.
Dick Johnson is Dead is the name of the movie.
Oh, yes. I thought it was something like that.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we've been getting back into a documentary mood recently. We did a whole binge of a bunch of documentaries in a row a few months ago, but now a couple more are creeping up on the horizon. I'm interested in Tony Hawk documentary, and my mom was talking about a Bee Gees documentary and a Tina Turner documentary. I don't know the names of any of these, but
They're on Crave, I think.
I mean, I do kind of short form documentary filmmaking, so to speak, as my day job. So that's something that I'm drawn to because I end up learning new techniques and ways of telling those kinds of stories.
Oh, for sure.
That's why I love Toys That Made Us on Netflix, because I feel like that show, from its documentary style, goes against every rule that I use at work for my more corporate and not-for-profit documentary filmmaking.
That's what makes it so fun, is that because of the subject matter is toys, they can really run wild and just do whatever they want. Yeah,
because we try to put the best of our clients on the screen. So if they're like, we cut that out. But this uses all those, Toys That Made Us uses all those tiny clips and outtakes to their advantage to help further along the story.
It'll be like a guy just kind of lifting up his hands in sort of a claw formation, and like that's not something you would include, but then they like have narration that he's like clawing to get out or
yeah. Well, he was sinking his claws into this.
Yeah.
They're really creative like that, which I appreciate. A lot of people don't get into the Toys That Made Us because they find the narrator less than pleasant.
I like him.
I think that's
he's
part
really
of the fun.
Quirky.
Yeah. Can't wait for the next season.
Oh, I'm
probably
so
coming in like 5 years.
I really hope that they do another season, because every single time it's like, ooh, it's the next one. I feel like when the last season came out, we like binged it in a day because we were just so excited to watch them all.
It's just a show that makes me so happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
You almost cried watching the Lego episode.
Yeah, I don't know what got me there. I found it maybe just so inspirational that they started out as like a simple like wooden duck company or something. Like they made wooden toys, and then they rose to like this huge thing that continues on. And I just love that it's a toy that anyone can enjoy.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter who you are, like boys and girls and anyone, like you can just, everyone can enjoy it because it's such a simple thing that you can build whatever you want. So it makes like the possibility is endless. So I think that's part of what made me like sort of tear up. It's just like the happiness and like sort of the future of it all.
Yeah. If you haven't seen Toys That Made Us on Netflix, highly recommend it. One of our favorites. So Dick Johnson is Dead. That's on our short list. We talked about doing a Johnny Depp marathon recently.
Yeah. What's Eating Gilbert Grape? That's high on my watch list.
Yeah. Other than that, I wanted to watch the Superman movies for a while, but I don't know how interested you are in that.
I could get behind that. You said you wanted to do like a Superman theme night.
Yeah, that's something that we've done several times throughout our relationship, particularly through COVID, is we'll have like a theme night or a theme weekend where we'll pick like, I don't know, like we'll watch Castaway and also like a bunch of episodes of Survivor, and then also eat like, I don't know, island themed food or whatever.
We haven't done that yet, but that does sound fun.
Yeah. So it sounds like Dick Johnson is Dead is probably going to be the one. I mean, you've wanted to watch that for a few months now, and I'd say the time is ripe.
For sure. I mean, it sounds, I don't know if fun is the right word, but it sounds like an interesting time.
So next episode, look forward to us probably discussing Dick Johnson is Dead, and then whatever other movies we end up watching in between now and the next recording. Thanks so much for listening to our first episode. It ended up being like 5 times longer than I initially intended, but if you have any thoughts about the movies that we discussed today, feel free to comment. If you have any predictions or thoughts about how you think we're going to like the movie that we say we're going to watch, go ahead and comment that too. But hope you listen to the next episode.
Thanks so much for tuning in.